In the decades following the Second World War, the world entered a period of profound reconstruction and reflection. Nation-states rebuilt physical infrastructure, restored political systems, and attempted to heal psychological wounds that had been inflicted by years of conflict. The United States, emerging as a global superpower, began to shape not only international politics, but also cultural expectations within its own borders. The society that developed in the post-war era promoted stability, discipline, and conformity as its foundational values. As the economic landscape shifted dramatically, suburban neighborhoods expanded with astonishing speed. Large families moved into newly constructed homes, secured stable employment, and embraced a standardized lifestyle. Domestic prosperity became a national symbol of success. Advertisements encouraged consumerism, presenting idealized images of family life, gender roles, and social respectability. Television, rapidly becoming a central fixture in American homes, delivered messages of certainty and order, reinforcing the belief that the post-war model of living was the correct one. Yet, beneath this carefully arranged surface, an entirely different sentiment was beginning to emerge, one that would grow quietly at first, and then appear with unmistakable intensity. Many young people, raised in comfort and security, felt disconnected from the values guiding their parents' world. They saw expectations all around them, expectations of career paths, expectations of patriotism, expectations of behavior, and expectations about what a successful life should look like. By the 1950s and early 1960s, this younger generation had begun to develop questions that traditional institutions did not easily address. They asked whether prosperity alone was sufficient to create meaning. They questioned whether rigid social structures were necessary for a functioning society. They examined whether the ideals promoted by school, government, and media reflected their personal experiences. These questions, initially explored only in private conversations among friends, gradually expanded until they became part of a broader cultural conversation. America was experiencing economic success, but many young people felt a growing emotional and spiritual gap. They were searching for authenticity, for self-expression, and for a sense of belonging that extended beyond material comfort. This quiet but persistent search for alternative ways of living would soon become one of the defining forces of the 20th century. Before the hippies became known for festivals, music, protests, and lifestyle choices, they began as an emotional movement, a collective desire to rethink the nature of identity, purpose, and connection.
People are a lot closer. You have a lot more contact with the other people in the dwellings. And life is easier.
What do you hope to achieve? What will be the final end to this? Are you going to start a whole new community and have people like this make cities of their own, or is this going to stay on a relatively small scale?
To understand the origins of hippie culture, we must explore the early developments that shaped an entire generation's worldview. We begin by examining the first cracks in the post-war social order. Cracks introduced by a small but influential group of writers who called themselves the Beats. To understand why the hippie movement emerged so powerfully in the 1960s, we must first explore the environment that shaped the minds of those who would eventually join it. After World War II, American society was guided by a strong emphasis on collective unity. The nation had experienced immense hardship, economic collapse in the 1930s, and global conflict in the early 1940s, and now sought to rebuild stability through predictable routines and clearly defined social expectations. Suburban expansion became the hallmark of this new era. Rows of homes were built on what had once been farmland, designed to house the growing middle class. These communities promised safety, comfort, and uniformity. Families living in these suburbs often shared similar backgrounds, economic conditions, and lifestyles. Children raised in this environment encountered limited cultural diversity and were generally taught to follow the same paths as their parents. The education system reinforced a standardized approach to learning. Schools emphasized discipline, rote memorization, and respect for authority. Students were encouraged to focus on academic achievement that would eventually lead to stable employment. Critical questioning of political decisions or social structures was not widely endorsed. Television introduced a controlled vision of American life, idealized families, neatly resolved conflicts, and a sense of moral certainty. The programs emphasized obedience and tradition. Commercial advertisements encouraged consumption as a marker of social status. A successful life was presented as one that included a comfortable home, a reliable job, and adherence to established norms. However, many young people felt that this model of living was overly restrictive. They began to observe contradictions in society. They saw segregation and racial injustice coexisting with slogans about freedom. They noticed that economic prosperity did not guarantee personal happiness. They sensed that strict gender roles limited both women's and men's potential. This emotional dissonance gradually transformed into intellectual questioning. College enrollments rose during the 1950s and 1960s, exposing young adults to new ideas, philosophies, and academic disciplines. Sociology, psychology, literature, and anthropology classes encouraged them to explore identity, culture, and morality from multiple perspectives. Students learned about existentialism, a philosophy emphasizing individual meaning and the absurdity of life's predetermined structures. They encountered writings that criticized conformity, challenged political authority, and celebrated the human capacity for self-determination. This growing intellectual exposure helped young people see that the world they lived in was not the only possible version of human society. Ideas from earlier thinkers, such as Henry David Thoreau's Reflections on Simple Living, Ralph Waldo Emerson's focus on individualism, and Eastern spiritual traditions, resurfaced and gained new relevance. By the early 1960s, the seeds of rebellion were firmly planted. Although not yet fully formed, a shared feeling existed among large numbers of youth that life could be lived differently, and that the search for meaning might require stepping outside the boundaries of mainstream expectations. This search would soon find its first voice through a literary movement that preceded the hippies, the Beat Generation. In the years before the hippies emerged, a small but influential movement known as the Beat Generation introduced a radical rethinking of American culture. The Beats, active primarily in the late 1940s and 1950s, challenged the very foundations of post-war conformity. Their ideas, writings, and lifestyles would later inspire many elements of hippie identity. The Beats rejected traditional pathways of success. Rather than settling into stable careers or adhering to conventional social expectations, they embraced lives characterized by exploration, spontaneity, and artistic expression. Writers such as Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and William S. Burroughs became central figures in this movement. Kerouac's seminal novel, On the Road, captured the spirit of the Beat lifestyle: travel, adventure, and the search for personal identity. The book emphasized freedom from material constraints and encouraged readers to pursue their own experiences rather than accept prescribed ones. It portrayed America not as a fixed nation of traditions, but as a land of boundless roads, unpredictable encounters, and opportunities for discovery. Ginsberg's poem, Howl, broke literary and social boundaries with its raw honesty. It addressed mental illness, sexuality, social inequality, and emotional struggle. The poem's candid tone shocked audiences, but resonated deeply with those who felt constrained by societal expectations. It signaled a new era of artistic expression that valued honesty over politeness and authenticity over conformity. Burroughs contributed to the movement with experimental prose that challenged narrative structure and forced readers to confront uncomfortable aspects of modern life. Beyond literature, the Beats were fascinated by Eastern religions, including Buddhism and Taoism. They practiced meditation, explored spiritual texts, and questioned Western perspectives on morality and identity. Their interest in spirituality, separate from institutional religion, would later influence the hippies' adoption of Eastern practices in the 1960s. The Beats also helped popularize concepts later central to hippie culture: a rejection of consumerism, a celebration of community, openness to alternative spirituality, interest in jazz, improvisation, and emotional expression, nonconformity as a moral and cultural value. While the Beat movement remained relatively small, its ideas spread far beyond its members. College students read their works in literature classes. Musicians adopted Beat themes in their lyrics. Young artists and intellectuals embraced the spirit of creative defiance. In many ways, the Beat generation served as a bridge between the post-war world and the counterculture that would soon emerge. Their influence set the stage for a broader transformation, a transformation that would fully bloom in the turbulent decade that followed. As the 1960s began, the United States found itself confronted by deep internal contradictions. On one hand, it presented an image of prosperity, technological advancement, and global leadership. On the other, it struggled with profound social inequalities and unresolved moral questions that had persisted for generations. The most significant of these challenges was the issue of racial injustice. For decades, segregation policies, discriminatory laws, and systemic barriers had denied African Americans equal access to education, employment, housing, and political representation. Although the Civil War had ended nearly a century earlier, many of the ideals it represented remained unfulfilled. The Civil Rights Movement emerged not only as a political struggle, but as a moral awakening. Activists such as Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and thousands of lesser-known individuals mobilized communities across the country. Their actions included peaceful protests, boycotts, sit-ins, and civil disobedience aimed at dismantling segregation and challenging discriminatory practices. Young Americans observed these events closely. For many of them, the Civil Rights Movement represented a powerful example of the ability of ordinary citizens to challenge unjust systems. They saw students their own age facing arrest, violence, and intimidation, yet continuing to stand firm in the pursuit of equality. Television played a critical role in shaping public perception. Images of police dogs attacking peaceful demonstrators, of children facing hostility while integrating schools, and of massive marches demanding justice brought the realities of inequality into American living rooms. These broadcasts disrupted the sanitized vision of society presented in mainstream media and forced viewers to confront uncomfortable truths. For young people seeking a deeper understanding of the world, the Civil Rights Movement provided a clear contrast to the culture of conformity they had grown up with. It demonstrated that societal rules were not inherently just, and that traditions could be questioned, even resisted, when they conflicted with moral principles. College campuses became hubs of intellectual and political engagement. Student organizations formed to discuss civil rights, international politics, social inequality, and the responsibility of youth in shaping the nation's future. Debates expanded beyond classroom discussions and entered daily life. Students no longer accepted passive roles. They saw themselves as active participants in social transformation. This period marked a turning point in cultural awareness. The questioning that began in private homes during the 1950s grew into a public movement of inquiry. Young Americans began asking, why do inequalities persist? How does power operate? And what role should individuals play in addressing injustice? The insights gained from the Civil Rights Movement extended far beyond racial issues. They influenced emerging conversations about gender equality, poverty, labor rights, and environmental protection. This broader awakening prepared an entire generation to examine the foundations of American society with a critical lens. The hippie movement did not originate directly from civil rights activism, yet it was deeply shaped by it. The emphasis on compassion, peaceful resistance, community organization, and moral conviction became central themes in the counterculture that would soon follow. The civil rights movement provided the philosophical grounding that allowed youth to imagine alternative ways of living, ways that prioritized humanity, empathy, and collective responsibility. This moral and cultural shift set the stage for the next defining event of the era, the Vietnam War. As the civil rights movement reshaped American consciousness, another force emerged that would profoundly divide the nation and accelerate the rise of countercultural identity: the Vietnam War. Initially, U.S. involvement in Vietnam was limited, framed as part of a broader strategy to contain communism during the Cold War. Many Americans knew little about the region or the conflict developing there. However, by the early 1960s, the United States began sending increasing numbers of troops, advisors, and resources to Southeast Asia. What started as a limited mission escalated into one of the longest and most controversial wars in American history. For the older generation, shaped by World War II and the struggle against totalitarianism, supporting the war often felt like a patriotic duty. They viewed communism as a global threat that needed to be confronted. But for younger Americans who had grown up in a different social environment, the war raised troubling questions. As deployment numbers rose and casualties increased, public support began to erode. Young men, many still in school, found themselves subject to the draft. The selective service system required them to register, and many were called to serve in a conflict they did not fully understand. The draft became a powerful symbol of generational tension. For youth, it represented a lack of agency. They were being asked to risk their lives for political decisions they had no influence over. Many began questioning not only the war, but the broader values of the society that demanded their participation. Television again played a crucial role. Images of burning villages, wounded soldiers, and grieving families appeared alongside nightly news reports. This broadcast reality contrasted sharply with government assurances of progress. The war felt distant yet immediate, a faraway conflict that reached into American homes every evening. The anti-war movement grew rapidly. Teach-ins, mass demonstrations, and public debates became common on college campuses. Students organized marches to protest military escalation, demand diplomatic solutions, and challenge the government's narrative. Some groups adopted a peaceful approach, advocating nonviolence and civil discourse. Others grew more radical, believing that the government was unwilling to listen to polite criticism. The Vietnam War also sparked broader philosophical debates. Youth questioned the nature of patriotism, the morality of armed conflict, and the ethics of foreign intervention. They examined whether loyalty to their nation required unquestioning obedience or thoughtful criticism. Within this climate of unrest, the hippie movement found new momentum. Many young people rejected the war, not only as a political disagreement, but as a cultural and moral issue. They saw it as evidence of a society governed by aggression, materialism, and narrow priorities. Hippies responded by advocating peace, compassion, and nonviolence. Their slogan, "Make love, not war," captured a worldview fundamentally opposed to the values they believed had produced the conflict. This phrase was not merely rhetorical. It expressed an entire philosophy centered on the rejection of violence as a means of solving problems. The anti-war movement and the hippie counterculture often overlapped, though they were not identical. While activists focused on policy change, hippies emphasized cultural transformation, altering the mindset that supported war in the first place. Together, they contributed to one of the most significant generational divides in American history. The older generation, shaped by different experiences, struggled to understand the youth's resistance. The younger generation, in turn, felt alienated by political leaders and societal expectations. The Vietnam War thus became a catalyst for the counterculture's expansion. It reinforced the desire among young people to reject traditional systems and explore alternative lifestyles grounded in peace, cooperation, and personal freedom. This movement toward alternative identity reached its peak in one city on the American West Coast, a place that would soon become synonymous with the origins of hippie culture: San Francisco. As the Vietnam War intensified and the youth question grew louder, another force began reshaping the cultural landscape of the 1960s. A transformation not of social policy, but of human perception itself. This became known as the psychedelic revolution, a movement that challenged conventional understandings of the mind, consciousness, and the limits of human experience. Though psychedelics would become associated with the hippie movement, their origins lay in scientific inquiry. During the early 1950s, researchers in Europe and the United States explored substances such as LSD and psilocybin, believing they could unlock insights into mental health, creativity, and the nature of the human psyche. Early studies suggested that under controlled conditions, these substances could help individuals confront repressed memories, process trauma, and gain new perspectives on their personal lives. One of the most influential early figures in this field was Dr. Timothy Leary, a psychologist at Harvard University. Initially conducting formal experiments, Leary became convinced that psychedelic substances held significant potential for expanding consciousness. His research group included students, writers, and fellow academics who experimented with LSD as a tool for introspection. Leary's famous phrase, "turn on, tune in, drop out," expressed his belief that individuals could liberate themselves from societal expectations through altered states of consciousness. The idea that meaning could be found not through traditional education, but through personal exploration of the mind, resonated with young people searching for alternatives to mainstream culture. Psychedelics appeared to offer a path toward inner freedom at a time when many felt constrained by external pressures. Another major figure was Ken Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Through his involvement in government-run drug trials, Kesey became fascinated by the potential of psychedelic experiences. He formed a group known as the Merry Pranksters, who traveled across the country in a brightly decorated bus, hosting events called acid tests. These gatherings became iconic in countercultural history, combining music, light shows, artistic performances, and communal experimentation. Acid tests represented the early aesthetic of the hippie movement. They embodied a rejection of conventional boundaries and an embrace of creativity, spontaneity, and collective exploration. Musicians such as the Grateful Dead played at these events, providing an improvisational soundtrack that further enhanced the surreal atmosphere. For many participants, these experiences were transformative, offering a sense of emotional insight, spiritual connection, or philosophical depth that they had not encountered in their daily lives. Psychedelics also contributed to the era's fascination with Eastern religions. Books on Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism became widely read among youth. Meditation, yoga, and spiritual retreats gained popularity as young people sought alternative paths to understanding the self. The hippies adopted terms like enlightenment, inner peace, and cosmic consciousness, reflecting this blending of spiritual traditions. However, the rise of psychedelics was not without controversy. Critics expressed concerns about safety, psychological risks, and the potential for irresponsible use. As public visibility increased, government leaders debated whether such substances posed a threat to national stability. By the late 1960s, LSD and similar substances were made illegal in the United States. Yet, despite legal restrictions, the cultural impact of psychedelics had already been cemented. The movement helped define the philosophy that would guide hippie culture, a belief that individuals could achieve liberation through personal exploration, rather than through adherence to societal expectations. The psychedelic revolution did not create the hippies, but it provided them with a language and a set of experiences that shaped their worldview. It expanded their understanding of identity, interconnectedness, and the possibilities of human existence. These ideas formed the spiritual and philosophical backbone of the movement, a foundation that would soon find its physical home in a single neighborhood on the West Coast. By the mid-1960s, the various elements contributing to the rise of hippie culture, disillusionment with conformity, civil rights activism, opposition to war, and the exploration of consciousness, began converging in a single geographic location, the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. What had once been a modest residential neighborhood became the epicenter of the countercultural movement. Its transformation was gradual but significant. The area offered inexpensive housing, making it attractive to students, artists, musicians, and young travelers seeking community and freedom from traditional expectations. Haight-Ashbury developed into a vibrant cultural hub where ideas flowed freely. Its streets became gathering places for conversations about philosophy, spirituality, art, and social change. Coffee shops hosted poetry readings, and parks became venues for spontaneous musical performances. The sense of community was one of the district's defining characteristics. Individuals from diverse backgrounds, students, runaways, activists, spiritual seekers, and performers found common ground in their desire for alternative ways of living. Communal households formed where resources were shared and responsibilities were distributed among members. These communities embraced principles of cooperation rather than competition. They rejected the notion that material success determined a person's worth. Instead, they valued creativity, emotional openness, environmental awareness, and interpersonal connection. Haight-Ashbury also became a center for the emerging hippie aesthetic. Clothing stores offered handmade garments, bright colors, and natural fabrics. Tie-dye shirts, flowing skirts, beads, and long hair became visual symbols of the culture, reflecting its emphasis on individuality and freedom from convention. Underground newspapers circulated throughout the neighborhood, spreading information about local events, political issues, artistic opportunities, and communal living arrangements. These publications helped strengthen the sense of identity within the community. Music played an especially significant role. Bands such as Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead often performed in local venues, contributing to the neighborhood's reputation as a center of musical innovation. The sound that emerged from Haight-Ashbury blended rock, folk, blues, and improvisation, creating a new style that would come to define the era. The district also served as a point of contact for those exploring Eastern spirituality. Meditation groups, yoga classes, and lectures on Hindu and Buddhist philosophy became common. The blending of Western and Eastern traditions contributed to the hippies' unique approach to spirituality, one that prioritized personal insight over institutional doctrine. By 1967, the movement had grown significantly. Thousands of young people flocked to San Francisco, drawn by reports of a welcoming community where they could express themselves freely. This migration reached its peak during the Summer of Love, when Haight-Ashbury became the symbolic heart of an emerging cultural revolution. However, the rapid influx of newcomers created challenges. Overcrowding strained local resources, and tensions occasionally emerged between long-term residents and newly arrived visitors. Despite these difficulties, Haight-Ashbury remained the birthplace of the hippie movement, the place where ideas transformed into practice, and where the counterculture transitioned from a series of isolated sentiments to a fully realized way of life. The community that developed in San Francisco represented more than a rejection of mainstream society. It embodied the belief that people could construct their own identities through creativity, cooperation, and compassion. This spirit would soon reach its fullest expression in the world of music, art, and massive gatherings that attracted global attention. As the counterculture strengthened and communities like Haight-Ashbury flourished, one element emerged as the movement's most powerful form of expression: music. More than any other aspect of the hippie identity, music captured the emotional and philosophical core of the era. It became the language through which the movement communicated hope, frustration, love, and rebellion. During the early 1960s, folk musicians such as Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and Phil Ochs gave voice to political unease and social reflection. Their work connected personal emotion with national events, inspiring youth to question authority and imagine alternative social arrangements. At the same time, rock and roll was undergoing a transformation. The genre shifted from simple entertainment to a platform for experimentation. Bands began blending electric guitars, improvisation, poetic lyrics, and new rhythms. This period saw the rise of influential groups like Jefferson Airplane, The Byrds, The Doors, and The Grateful Dead, artists who pushed musical boundaries and reflected the cultural energy of the era. Music acted as both a unifying and organizing force. Performances became communal experiences where thousands gathered to share ideas, celebrate creativity, and cultivate a sense of belonging. Concerts and festivals served not merely as entertainment, but as symbolic spaces where the values of the hippie movement, peace, freedom, connection, and discovery, were lived out in real time. The year 1967 stood out as a pivotal moment in the musical and cultural history of the movement. Known as the Summer of Love, it drew tens of thousands of young people to San Francisco in search of community and meaning. Media coverage portrayed the district as a utopian center of artistic expression, attracting even greater numbers. During the Summer of Love, the combination of music, communal living, psychedelic exploration, and activism reached new heights. Free concerts filled public parks, with bands like Big Brother and the Holding Company performing for huge crowds. The atmosphere emphasized openness, acceptance, and a shared belief in the possibility of a peaceful society. Yet the Summer of Love was also a moment of ambiguity. While it represented the peak of hippie idealism, it also exposed the movement's vulnerabilities. The influx of visitors strained resources in Haight-Ashbury. Some newcomers lacked the commitment to the culture's values, while others arrived seeking curiosity rather than community. Local infrastructure could not support the sudden increase in population, and issues such as overcrowding and lack of essential services began to appear. Nevertheless, 1967 stands as a defining year in countercultural history. It represented the moment when the hippie movement captured national and international attention. It showcased the potential of music to unite diverse groups and symbolized a collective desire for transformation. The energy of the Summer of Love would set the stage for an event even larger, one that would come to define an entire generation. In August 1969, the cultural momentum that had been building for nearly a decade culminated in what many consider the most iconic event of the hippie era, the Woodstock Music and Art Fair. Planned as a modest festival in upstate New York, Woodstock soon transformed into a historic gathering that defied expectations. Organizers initially anticipated a crowd of approximately 50,000 people. Instead, nearly 500,000 arrived, overwhelming every logistical plan. Highways became gridlocked, fences collapsed, and the site rapidly filled with attendees who arrived from across the country. Despite these challenges, the atmosphere remained remarkably peaceful. For 3 days, amidst rain, mud, and shortages of food and supplies, the crowd remained united by a sense of shared purpose. Many observers noted the absence of violence or significant conflict, particularly given the size of the event. Instead, participants cooperated with one another, sharing resources and supporting those in need. Musically, Woodstock brought together some of the most influential artists of the time. Performances by Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Santana, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and countless others defined the festival's sound and legacy. Hendrix's rendition of the national anthem, performed with improvisational intensity, has become one of the most enduring symbols of the era, capturing both the spirit of rebellion and the desire for reimagining American identity. Woodstock represented more than a concert. It was a demonstration of hippie values displayed on a national stage. The festival showed that large groups could gather without violence, that music could serve as a powerful unifying force, and that community could flourish even in challenging circumstances. It embodied the idealism of the movement: peace, cooperation, and creative expression. However, Woodstock also marked a turning point. The movement's visibility was at its peak, but the challenges facing the counterculture were increasing. The same year saw events that reflected the darker side of the era. The Altamont Free Concert, held later in 1969, resulted in violence and tragedy, revealing the fragility of large gatherings and the vulnerabilities of unstructured events. Public opinion began to shift as media coverage increasingly focused on drug use, crime, and social conflict. Political leaders expressed growing alarm about the counterculture's influence, and authorities implemented measures aimed at controlling or discouraging its spread. Despite these developments, Woodstock remains a defining moment in American cultural history. It symbolized the height of hippie optimism and the potential of collective action inspired by music and shared values. It captured the imagination of millions and continues to represent the aspiration for peace and unity. Yet, as the 1970s approached, the conditions that had enabled the hippie movement to flourish began to change. Economic pressures, political shifts, and internal challenges contributed to the movement's gradual decline. As the new decade arrived, the hippie movement faced growing challenges that threatened its cohesion and influence. The rapid expansion of the community during events such as the Summer of Love and Woodstock had revealed structural weaknesses. Neighborhoods like Haight-Ashbury struggled with overcrowding, inadequate sanitation, and limited access to essential services. These issues made communal living increasingly difficult to sustain.
Probably the worst inner-city drug epidemic you've ever seen in the United States happened in the late 60s, early 70s here in the Haight-Ashbury. If you remember those times, that post-Summer of Love, it was like World War II. The drug problem was so severe.
There's a widespread, unsupervised drug experimentation, and that also included, because in part, the effect of drugs in loosening people's usual standards of behavior more in different kinds of sexual activity.
Additionally, the mainstream media began to highlight negative aspects of the counterculture. Reports focused on drug-related incidents, interpersonal conflicts, and crime, often overlooking the movement's positive contributions. This shift in public perception created tension between the hippies and the wider society, further complicating efforts to maintain stability within their communities.
We are putting the property on 5-day notice to comply with the violations and correct the violations.
We're not hurting anybody. We're not doing anything wrong. We were just one big happy family.
Legal pressures also increased. Federal and state governments imposed strict regulations on psychedelic substances, making their use and distribution illegal. Authorities viewed the counterculture as a challenge to traditional structures and responded with measures aimed at reducing its visibility and influence.
Discussion here and elsewhere with respect to love. Now, there are several kinds of love. I don't know what kind of love these young people are seeking. But in the last 6 years, or last 3 years, there's been 6 times as much venereal disease in this neighborhood.
Within the movement itself, disagreements emerged. Some individuals felt that the hippie lifestyle should remain centered on personal exploration and artistic expression. Others believed that political activism, particularly anti-war efforts, should be the primary focus. These differing priorities created divisions within the community. Despite these challenges, the hippie movement continued to exert a lasting influence on American society. Its contributions extended far beyond the images of festivals, clothing, and music that defined the era. Environmental awareness grew as the hippies emphasized the importance of nature, conservation, and sustainable living. Their interest in organic food, recycling, and alternative energy sources helped lay the foundation for later environmental movements. Spiritual exploration also expanded. Practices such as meditation, yoga, and holistic health treatments, once considered unconventional, became increasingly mainstream. The hippies' interest in Eastern philosophies introduced many Americans to concepts such as mindfulness, interconnectedness, and personal enlightenment. Music festivals, community gatherings, and collaborative art projects continued to draw inspiration from the counterculture's ideals. The modern festival culture, with its emphasis on inclusivity, creativity, and communal experience, owes much to the legacy of the hippie movement. In broader cultural terms, the hippies challenged assumptions about authority, identity, and social responsibility. They demonstrated that young people could play a central role in shaping national discussions. They encouraged society to reconsider the value of materialism and to explore new understandings of personal fulfillment. Though the movement ultimately fragmented, its legacy endures in countless aspects of modern life. It influenced subsequent generations of activists, artists, and thinkers. It reshaped attitudes toward war, introduced new forms of artistic expression, and contributed to evolving ideas about individual autonomy and spiritual exploration. In the end, the hippie movement represented more than a temporary cultural trend. It was a catalyst for transformation, one that continues to shape the social and cultural landscape long after its peak. The hippie movement emerged during one of the most turbulent periods in modern American history. It developed in response to social injustice, political conflict, and a growing desire among young people to live in accordance with their own values rather than the expectations of society. From its earliest roots in literary rebellion and civil rights activism to its flourishing in the streets of San Francisco, the movement expressed a longing for authenticity, creativity, and human connection. It brought together individuals who believed that peace, compassion, and cooperation were not only possible, but essential for building a better world. Though the movement faced challenges and ultimately declined, its impact extended far beyond its years. It influenced environmental activism, spiritual practices, artistic innovation, and social awareness. It encouraged society to question established norms and to imagine alternative ways of living. The legacy of the hippies continues to be felt today in festivals, cultural expressions, and ongoing conversations about identity, freedom, and community. It reminds us that cultural change often begins with those willing to challenge conventions and explore new possibilities. This has been the story of the origins of hippie culture, a cultural revolution that reshaped the world's understanding of peace, creativity, and human potential.